Okay, Rabbi said we're going to go through some of the halachas of Purim. We're going to go and try and go Keseda. That means we're going to go Kefi, the Jewish Gavaldiga calendar that we have, and go Kefi the Seder of the days of halachas that we have to do. Moish, you want to shout out? Sure, you got one. So let's go through one by one the halachas that are Nageya. We're leading us up obviously to the Yom HaPurim Atzmoi, Yom HaKadosh, V'Hatohor of Purim itself, which there's a lot to discuss. Be'ez Hashem, we'll have to discuss all the sorts of shailas that are Nageya to the halachas of getting drunk and exactly how to do that, in which possible way. Shlachmonas, Matoles Evyoinim, the actual Suda, Kriyas HaMegillah, what if a person wants to daven when he is drunk, very Nageya, by the way, this year, because, it's Nageya every year, but especially this year, because we've got in Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh, we have a Purim Shechalios Be'erev Shabbos. That means Friday is Purim, and therefore often we're going to have a Shaila of Mincha and Kabbalah Shabbos, whereas in the regular year sometimes we can have Mincha first, and we can do Ma'ariv much, much later. So here there's all sorts of Shailas. There's another Shaila this year that we have to discuss, again, for us in Yerushalayim. Purim Shechalios Be'erev Shabbos has a unique shaila of eating a Suda on an Erev Shabbos, which is normally problematic, which we will then have to discuss. How does that work and the different options that you have. Getting drunk and damaging things while you are drunk is also a very common shaila. What happens if while a person is drunk he damages things? Very Nageya. You chayiv to pay, you're not chayiv to pay. There's all sorts of shailas that we have to get to, and like I said, we're just going to go Keseda Lefi the Yomim that we're coming up to, the ones that we meet first. We'll go through those ones first. So we'll start with Be'ez Hashem, Parsha Zocha Haba Aleinu L'Toiva. Parsha Zocha is the parsha when we read about Amalek. The Torah tells us very clearly, Parsha B'Shalach Yudzayin Yudalet, when the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Moshe, Emcha Zeicha Amalek, to destroy, to get rid of, to erase all the Zeicha, any memory of Amalek. And the Kriya of Parsha Zocha is, although it's a Shailim and the Rishonim, L'Halacha L'Maisa, we paskin, it's a Chiyav Min HaTorah. It is a Da'oraisa. That means just like on the first night of Pesach we eat matzah, and on the first day of Sukkot we shake a lulav and an esrog, these are Shailis of a Da'oraisa, so too reading Kriyas HaZocha is also a Da'oraisa. Now there is a Machlokes Rishonim exactly what the gather of this is. We'll announce it, Be'ez Hashem, maybe by the Bima right before we actually read it. And that is, first of all, the Ramban. The Ramban says the mitzvah over here, according to Ramban, is not to forget that which Amalek did to us. That's what the Ramban holds. The Rambam holds differently. The mitzvah say is to remember the bad maisim of Amalek, to awaken the hatred of Amalek in our hearts every single day. For those people that are makbid to say the Shechivas at the end of davening, it has Zeich Amalek in there as well. But of course that is not a deraisa. Why do we do it once a year? Why Lamaisa don't we read this every single day? Why don't we do it once a month? What's Pshat? Once a year we do Kriyas Zocha. What's the Pshat? So Pshat, we know Chazal tell us that a mace is not forgotten for 12 months. That means after 12 months, the mace slowly starts to get forgotten. A person can cope with it a lot more. And therefore, we want to make sure that every 12 months we awaken the hatred. Obviously, there's an interesting shaila, by the way, this year, because we're doing Zocha in Adar Beis, and you had Adar Aleph, so it could be it's more than 12 months, and therefore, what's the shaila over there? Okay, so we're not going to go into that at this moment of time.
Parsha in the week, whatever Parsha is.
That's where it is. Oh, that's where Zocha is, yeah.
Yeah, so we listened to it then. So we made
but now, okay, one second, let's go through the halachas first and tell me if all those halachas apply to when we read it over then. First of all, the Mishnah Berurah says, Simon Tofresh Pehei, that you need a minyan. You need a minyan with a Sefer Torah of 10 people. The Leket Yosha brings down from his Rebbe, the Heilige Trumas Hadeshen, that he was makbid by Parsha Zocha to read from a Sefer Torah that was very meduik, in other words, the best Mahadran Sefer Torah that they had. And in fact, when Mr. Karedet Zatzal brings down that many people are makbid to listen to Kriyas HaZocha from the same minhag of the ksiva of the Sefer Torah that they themselves are noyeg in. For example, if a person is noyeg in minhag ari, for example, he has tefillin ari, mezuzah ari, whatever, so he should really lechatchila, of course it works anyway, even if you don't, but lechatchila have a Sefer Torah that is ari, right? Ksav ari. Same thing if you're Sfardi and you have Ksav Velish, you should have a Sefer Torah that has a similar thing. Again, when Mr. Gavelet Zatzal says this is a din lechatchila, of course it works in any Ksav that you have. There's no problem whatsoever in that case. The Mishnah Berurah brings down that the Balkoira, should have kavana to be mitzi the olam. In other words, by us listening, shemeh ka'ina, we have the idea that when we listen to something, it's as if we said it, but the Balkora, the person reading it, has to have kavana for us as well. The Chassam Sofer brings down the Taz also that it's also kedai for a person to actually have kavana with the brachas. That means whoever's going to get the aliyah of Zocha, and we're going to announce this Be'ez Hashem, even though the Stapler said he never found anyone that was machmer in this, but Akaponim, the Heilige Chassam Sofer brings it, the Taz brings it, that you should have kavana. It means everyone here should have kavana, that when the person gets the aliyah, and it says Baruch Hashem HaMavoyach, so you should have kavana to be yotze with that as well. Again, we'll announce that before we get over there. Do you have to understand the actual Zocha? Do you have to understand what's going on? Do you have to understand every word? How does it work? So the general rule is, Gemara Megillah, that anything that is in Lashon HaKodesh, you are automatically yotze, even if you do not understand. Although Avadu, it's toiv, it's good for a person to understand what's going on. Take an art scroll, either B'Shas Maisa or before, look it up, read it, understand it. I think everybody here basically understands what's going on, even if we don't understand every word. For example, right? Everybody here knows that Rashi brings three pshatim and Rashi korecha, right? So what do you need to do? So the Stapler said, as long as you have one of those pshatim and Rashi in mind, you're good enough. You don't have to have every one of the three going on at the same time. In that case, you don't have to worry. About you have to hear every single word, but there are people that go running around the ganze Shabbos and Parsha Zacha, hearing from this shul to that shul to that shul, because Efshai I didn't hear Mamash ganze Zach. Okay, we have to remember, Kriyishma is also a daraisa every single day. So make sure you say Kriyishma also with a dikduk, like the Shulchan Aruch says in Simon. Samach Aleph. Got to be careful for the dikduk of the Lashon of Kriyishma, just because it's a daraisa. Unfortunately, we do it every day, so just we move. Zacha, mamash, we're listening every word pick over the talus, because maybe our ear won't hear if we have the talus over our ears, and therefore we want to listen to every word, which is gavaldik. It's beautiful. But I'm Kaponim, just remember, Kriyishma is also a daraisa, and be careful over there. Moving on, Zukt Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank in the Mikroi Kodesh, and Rav Moshe also lechatchila to his Zocha in the minig of the Havura that you are noyegin. So if the Havura that you have is a Chassidish Havura, so really you should have a Chassidish Havura for Parashat Zocha, right? If it's Chassidish, if it's Svardish, if it's Litvish, whatever it is, lechatchila. Again, Avada and Avada, 1000%. Svardi, Litvish, Chassidish doesn't make a difference. Everyone's yotza with whatever you hear. We're dealing with dinin lechatchila because, of course, we're dealing with the daraisa, so we try to make the best of it that we can. There's a machlokes whether women are chayiv or potter in Zacha. The Chinuch famously saying that women are going to be potter, whereas the Chassam Sofer and the Marisham hold that women are chayiv midda oraisa. And lamaisa, the psak halacha lamaisa is that the meaning is that they go, and avada they get a mitzvah. That's no shaila whatsoever. There is a tshuva in the Minchas Yitzchak whether a Sefer Torah is allowed to be taken out from the Aron HaKodesh specifically for a kriyas of Zocha for women, which they do in many shuls. They say, Rabbi Sai, at 12 o'clock, whatever it is going to be a kriya Zocha for women. Right? It's a big shayla. And Chassidish has a whole avichas about it. Or taking out a Sefer Torah for a woman that could be, she's not even chayiv to hear it. For a man, I hear. Or for a woman, nefesh or not. The minig is that many shuls do it. When we used to have, in the old building, when we used to have an Ezras Noshim and women used to come Kaseda, so we got requests for making a women's Parsha Zacha. So what we did is by Mincha time, we advertised that we'll be reading Zacha again, and while the Sefer Torah is out for Zacha, for the regular Parsha of the Shabbos, for next week's Shabbos Parsha, so maybe we did Zacha at the same time. This way you're not taking a Sefer Torah especially, and it did help for a couple of guys at the same time. But Al Kaponim, that is the Shaila over there. If a person's a Choyla, then Avada, there's a shayla if he's allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to him. That's a famous shayla if you're allowed to move a Sefer Torah. Shulchan Aruch brings it in Siman Kuf Lamed Hey, right? If you're allowed to take a Sefer Torah and take it over to anybody for like a choyla who can't do it, yeah.
Would it also be good if you have one guy just stay afterwards, so it's not specifically for...
No, because you need a minion of 10. If you have a minion of 10, that's good. One person not going to help you. Now, if you miss Kriya of Zacha, which of course you should not, but if Chas v'Sholem, a person poshet mamish such a migraine that he would gefährlich, he would miss every restaurant meal that anybody invited to him, whatever it was, and he wouldn't go, and he would mamish, he's really sick. So then in Achanami, he can make it up by listening to the Kriya on Purim Atzmoy. On Yom HaPurim, we read similar. Let's move on, Rabbi Sai. Machas is HaShekel. Right, the next thing we move on to is Machzor Shekel. Well, then we move on to Tainis Esther. When the Beis Hamikdash, the Rambam tells us to look it up. It's a beautiful Rambam in Hilchos Purim in Perek Dalet, where the Rambam brings down that Bismana Beis Hamikdash, they used to collect the shkolim from every adult in Klal Yisrael. Everyone would donate half a shekel, right, for the purchase of the animals for the korbanos and various other sorchit tzibur that they did. Obviously, the famous Yisoid and all the Muslims for him, Chatzi shekel, not a whole shekel, because everyone is not whole by himself. You need the actors of Klal Yisrael, you need somebody else for chole v'chole. The Mishnah in Shkolim, Perek Aleph, describes to us what happened. And the Mishnah says, starting with Chodesh Adar, the Shluchim would go out and they would do their annual collection of the Shkolim, which would begin 2 weeks later on the 15th of Adar. And from that day onwards, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, already they set up these like booths, whatever it was, in order for the purpose of collecting the Shkolim. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the Shkolim were brought to the Beis HaMikdash. They were designated in a specific room. The Shkolim were basically divided into different containers to use for the korbanos and the other tzorchei tzibur. The Gemara in Megillah, Daf Yud Gimel, tells us what is the reason why we give Machzor Shekel specifically before reading the Megillah, Tahainu, before Purim. What is the reason for that? So the Gemara Megillah Yud Gimel, the reason is because we want to give our shkolim before Haman gave his, meaning and referring to that in the Megillah, when Haman bribed Achashverosh with 10,000 kikar of kesef in order to kill the Jews. 10,000 kikar kesef. By the way, we made a cheshbon once that if 43.6 kilo is basically a kikar kesef, so 1 kilo is about $250. So it comes out that 10,000 kikar kesef is about $100 million. So that is what Achashverosh was paid off for, was bribed by Haman in order to get rid of the Jews, and therefore, says the Gemara in Megillah Yud Gimel, we try to give our shkolim dafka before Haman gave his. What was the half a shekel? So according to Rashi, it was a coin specifically worth a half a shekel. According to Akedas Yitzchak, the Machzor Shekel is actually a coin that was cut in half. They used to take it and used to cut it in half according to the Akedas Yitzchak. Others want to say the Yad Yitzchak brings down that it wasn't a specific coin. It was basically anything the value of half a shekel. Allah Chalamayis, the Ramah bring Tofei Study Hey, that nowadays we don't exactly have this coin, and therefore we still give, even though we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, a half a shekel as a zeicha for that. A very, very important thing to realize that. Now, what does it mean, Lamaisa? How many do we give? So because, and the Rishonim bring this down already, the Mordcha, the Tashbeit, when the Ramah brings Halacha Lamaisa, that since it says the word Truma 3 times in the Parasha Machzor Shekel, that means we give 3 coins of half a shekel in that case. And the coin should be a half of that currency in that place. Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita writes that it should be spendable in that place. If it's not spendable here, you shouldn't use it. So, for example, to use a 50p, that won't really work because nobody's going to accept it over here. Right? In England, for example, that will work. Whereas a half a shekel, which is the minig here in Eretz Yisrael, you give 3 half a shekels. Sometimes the gabba will come along and will tape 3 together. He'll put them into the container, and then you'll lift them up. You'll be koiner it. Don't say this is the machzor shekel, because it's not. It's a zeicha la machzor shekel. That's a very important thing. There's a hitter to give silver. The Yisod v'Sharish v'Avoda brings it. The Kaf HaChaim brings it as well. That's why some shuls have, for example, actual silver. I'm sure, Ben, you've seen that. Kaf HaChaim brings it down, and that's why people do it. But again, if you don't have it, take 3 half a shekels and you are good. Now, let us move on. It's an adult, but a parent that gives for a child already was kovei the minig should continue giving for that child. When do we give it and where to give it to? So number 1, according to the Ramah, you should give it before Purim, because the Gemara tells us clearly we want to give it before Haman gave his. The Kaf HaChaim says to give it on Rosh Chodesh Adar. Kaf HaChaim, Rosh Chodesh Adar, by the way, so that's now. That's Wednesday night, okay? And or he writes before Parsha Zocha. That's what the Kaf HaChaim brings down to Maisa. Tosfos, famously in Megillah Chof Aleph says Tosfos, the ikr is to give it on the Yom HaTainis. Dahainu, on Tainis Esther, which is the minig. If you look in the Siddur HaRashash, he brings up Pi Kabbalah, Pi Soid, to give it on the Yom HaTainis, which is the minig in most places, that on Tainis Esther, they put up the container, Zeichen HaMachzor Shekel, and that's what people do. The minig Yerushalayim is to give it before Mincha. That's the minig Yerushalayim that is brought down. But whenever you give it, it's 100% fine. The Stipler said if you forgot to give it, you can give it all the way until Purim day before Mikra Megillah in the case. What to do with it? Lamaisa, the Rishonim say you can give it to any tzedakah without any problem whatsoever. And the Aruch HaShulchan says you should give it to a berek habayik of a Beis HaKnesses or a Beis HaMedrash, and use it for tikkun of the Beis HaKnesses and the Beis HaMedrash. So that is, so far we got Zocha, Then we got Machzor Shekel. Let's move on quickly and we'll end with this for today. The sugya of Tainis Esther. And that is, as we know, a Gavaldiga Tainis that Esther herself and all of Klal Yisrael fasted. We mentioned this a bit yesterday as well, for the sake of Klal Yisrael's Gzeira that should be Mevatel. The Maisa, it begins at Alois. Now, it's a very, very important yesod we have to remember when it comes to fasting, and that is, the fast begins be'etzem by Alois. But if you go to sleep the night before with a real sleep, you've automatically been makabel of tainis. That means if you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning after a gezinta sleep, you didn't plan on waking up, but you just did wake up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, I've got like 20 minutes till Alois, let's chaparine a cereal, chaparine, whatever it may be, you're not allowed to do that. Because once going to sleep, you've already been makabel the fast. The Ramah says when it comes to drinks is not that way, because a person often wakes up and has a drink, and therefore it's ki'ilu al dai to the that you went to sleep. Therefore, if you wake up in the morning and you wake up before the fast actually has begun, before Alois, you can always have a drink. What you should do is go to sleep and have kavanah and say, listen, if I wake up on time, then yeah, I'd like to eat before Alois. And this way you are not makabel the tainis in that case over there. It's a very, very important thing to remember. Rinsing your mouth, brushing your teeth is very similar to all the other fasts. Obviously, exclusion of Yom Kippur, which is a different sugya. But most fasts anyway, the Mishnah Berurah paskins that if you're b'tsar godel, if it's very hard for you to continue in your day, to speak, to learn, whatever, so then yes, you can rinse out your mouth. Min Chasitzok says that even applies to brushing your teeth. But obviously, the Mishnah Berurah says to lean forward to make sure that you don't swallow any of the water. You can have medication. Those people that have medication, you can have medication. You can even, Zukwa Vozna Shevet HaLevi, have a small amount of water, liquid, to get down the medication. You don't have to be poigim it like you would do, like say on Yom Kippur or even on Tisha B'Av. You can just take a little bit of water. Again, in a situation where you need the medication, that's a very, very important thing. Shower, a person shouldn't do. We know that on a fast day, we don't shower normally, again, with hot. In a regular fast, on Tainis Esther is actually the exception to that. Tainis Esther, Lamaisa, you are allowed to actually have a regular hot shower. Listening to music is always a shaila, especially if it's a tainis that's related to Churban Beis Hamikdash. This one, Lamaisa, is not related to Churban Beis Hamikdash, but Zukwa V'Yashav Lamaisa, it's a Yom HaTainis. It's not really the day that a person should be listening to music. The Kavayusha, the Heilige Kavayusha, brings down in Chele Beis Simon Perek Tzadi Zayin, where he brings down the sugya of Tainis Esther. The Heilige Kavayusha, a person should daven on Tainis Esther not to come to any chait or ovoin on Purim itself. That's through the eating and the drinking. And he says, he brings down, the Kavayusha brings down. We just said one reason for fasting is because Esther and Klal Yisrael fasted b'shas HaMegillah, b'shas the Gzeira of Haman and Achashverosh. Oba, the Kavayusha brings another reason. He brings a reason from the Heilige Magid Meshorim. The Magid Meshorim was Kiyodua, was the Malach that taught the Beis Yosef what to write in the Shulchan Aruch. The Magid Meshorim brings down, and he revealed secretly to the Beis Yosef that we're worried that through the eating and drinking that we do on Purim, we may come to our Averis, we may come to all these sorts of things. Therefore, the Rebbeinu Shalom was makter tainis as a skula to save Klal Yisrael from any Averis that may happen over there. It's a very important thing. The Kaf HaChaim brings down that the tainis is skula, a person to control his anger. If a person has an issue with anger, so the Kaf HaChaim, tainis Esther is the day. The minig, as we know, the Gemara Brachas Davav Mabes tells us to give tzedakah. That's the whole schar of the tainis. And the Rosh says, so importantly, that the side of Tainis Esther is tefillah. We all have things to daven for. We all have things that we need. Let's take the yom of Tainis Esther. Don't waste it. Just like the day of Purim we spoke about already. The day of Tainis Esther is not a day that you should be sleeping the whole day just to get away from the fast. It's a day of tefillah. It's a day of avodas Hashem. It's a day of opportunity. Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue with the halachos of Kriyas HaMegillah. Have a wonderful day.